Hi guys, welcome back. It was nice to have a break for a little while to celebrate Christmas, the New Year, and then our youngest daughter's birthday. But here we are back at it, and I figured I would show you some things that as homesteaders or small farmers we do in the winter. I figured first of all, since it's cold and flu season and flu is pretty rampant right now, that I would share how I make bone broth. And this is just what I do. I've gone off of several recipes to just kind of create my own version, but I follow the basic guidelines. So what I have right here is my roasting pan. I believe it's 10 or 12 quarts. And then what I have in the pan right now that you just saw me doing is putting bones that we used from when we broke down our chickens, so for the chicken breast and thighs, things like that. Here's what we have left over: skin, neck, things like that. Now when we got our chickens from the processing facility, we didn't ask for the head or feet or anything like that. You can get that back from them if you ask. Sometimes they charge a fee, sometimes they don't. But in this case, we didn't get that. We might next time. Typically, if they charge a fee, it's because they cleaned and sanitized them to a certain degree. So this is just what we have and what we're starting with right now. You could do this on a smaller scale in your crock pot. However, when I make bone broth, what I do is I'll leave a quart jar in the refrigerator, and then I will pressure can the rest of the quarts and put them over here on my canning shelf. And we're currently out, so it is a good time to make it. So I have them in here frozen currently. And typically to make a couple quarts of, like 2 quarts of bone broth, you'll need roughly 3 to 5 chicken cavities. And you can use chicken bones that have already been cooked, like if you do a crock pot chicken, or if you do one on the grill or roasted in the oven, you can still use that because all the nutrients are still in the chicken bones that we want to get out for the bone broth. So I have my chicken bones in here, and then what I do is I also add garlic. This is just the last bit of a head of garlic that I have. There's about 4 cloves on there. I'll probably add more later, but this is what I'll start with to put in there. And a lot of people can peel the plastic off, or not the plastic. A lot of people will peel the outside layers off. You can leave that on there, that's fine. It's not going to do anything to your food or your bone broth. And I'm just kind of smashing these up a little bit as I guess there are a couple. So technically there's about 6 cloves in there. So I'm just smashing them up, breaking them down a little bit with my fingers as I put them in there. And then I have a nice garlic smell on my hands. Now another thing I do with bone broth, as I'm cooking throughout the week, or if I know I'm going to be making bone broth, if I use any carrots, onions, celery, mushrooms, I'll kind of leave the parts that I'm not using in the meal that I'm cooking. So the peels, the ends, the stems, things like that, the carrot tops, etc. I'll kind of put those in a bowl or a zip top baggie in my fridge during that time frame, and just kind of accumulate it throughout the week so that I can put it in the bone broth and get the rest of the nutrients out of that. So I'm using everything for what I can. And that's kind of one thing that we're doing with the chicken, is we're utilizing as much of the chicken as possible. So after we cook down the bone broth, the rest, whatever's left over, will go out to our chickens, and they'll kind of pick off the meat, etc. But it'll also be in our compost pile, so it can break down, and all of those microorganisms will then also feed off of the bones and whatever the chickens don't eat off of these cavities. But right now I also have beef broth going up in my crock pot in my kitchen right now. Upstairs smells heavenly. But that's been going for about 14 hours, so we're getting close to that one being done. And like I said, I'll show you that when I get done setting up the chicken bone broth. But since I used a lot of my leftovers and scraps from cooking for the beef broth, I don't have any to put in here, which is totally okay. You can choose to not add anything if you want. You can just do chicken and water, but it is advised to at least add garlic to the bone broth, because garlic is also a great healer. Sometimes you can also add vinegar or apple cider vinegar. I've heard that that helps break it down, and the salt density will come off of the bones a lot easier. I am testing that for the first time upstairs with my beef bones, and we'll take a look at that here in a minute. But since I don't have any leftover kitchen scraps to go in here, what I'm going to do is grab my freezer burned carrots from actually a couple of years ago, and put those in here. Get some of that flavor out of those carrots, and then once they're good and cooked, they'll go out to the chickens and they'll get fed. So we're really using all of our foods as much as we possibly can. So I'm just going to break these down and put them in here. And also I have some freezer burned zucchini from the same time frame as the carrots, and we'll go ahead and put that in there so we can get as many nutrients out of there in here as possible. And then once it's all cooked down, it'll also go to the chickens, and they love this stuff too. So let's go ahead and add that, and then we'll go on to the next step. Alright, now I got all that stuff in there. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to add water. And what you want to do is you want to add enough water to cover your chicken. And I'll show you here in a second in the roasting pan about how far I'm going to fill it. Just because these are frozen, some water and moisture is going to come off of it. And this one's sticking up a little high right now. I will adjust it so that it all kind of lays fairly flat. And we'll be able to move it around here in a few hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add probably 1.5 more of these. So this is an 8-cup pitcher. Currently have 8 cups in there. I'm probably going to add at least 8 more cups. So I'm going to go grab that water, and then we'll see how much is in there and if I need to add more right now. I have it set here on 250 in the roaster pan. And here's kind of what it looks like. Now my water line is currently right about there. So I want it up to about here. And then we'll go from there. And we'll let this go. I don't add any salt to it. My goal is always to salt my food when I'm cooking it, not with anything that I need. And in all reality, it's just like the low sodium broth or stock that you're going to buy in the store. So this is good for now. And what we'll do is we'll finish it up tomorrow. Alright guys, now we're going to take a look at the beef broth that's been in the crock pot overnight. Let's see, it is currently 12:15. So it's been in there about 18 hours and it should be pretty good. So let's take a look at it before I start emptying it out and tell you the next steps. So you can see carrots, celery, carrots, there's a mushroom. So there's a lot of good stuff in there as far as food scraps. So what I do initially is I'm using the same 8-quart pitcher as I was using for the water because it's not dirty, it just had water in there. And then, yes, I realized that this is a sifter, but if you notice the holes on it are small enough that like chunks of food aren't going to get through it. So what I do initially is I kind of start grabbing stuff out of there and put it into the sifter on top of the pitcher right now to kind of get the juice and the liquids to fall off and soak into the pitcher right now. And the girls are playing in the background so I can finish filming this video and hoping that it goes up today since it's Thursday in the new year. So let's go ahead and transition things and we'll go from there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bone broth liquid into my jars. I don't plan on canning this unless I have far too much, but the great thing about bone broth is you can store it in your fridge for roughly a month, and just with the food that we're going to be eating in the next month, I plan on using all of it before it would go bad. Now with the chicken broth I'm working on downstairs, I hope to continue to do that throughout the next several days and into next week by continuing to make the chicken broth. And I do plan on actually canning that so it's shelf stable outside of the refrigerator because we need to clear up some space in our freezer for the upcoming year. So for right now, all the chicken bone broth will be canned except for 1 or 2 quarts that I'll put in the fridge. So let's go ahead and put the beef bone broth into the jars. So I'm going to use a plastic funnel because that's what I have right now on hand. When you put it in here, you want to leave about 1 inch headspace when you're canning. I typically just fill it up to this lip right here, whether I'm putting it in the fridge or canning it. And since we used this measuring pitcher to grab it out of the crock pot, I'm just going to use it to fill the jar. Now when you're working with this, you want to be careful because it is warm, hot, and you can burn yourself. Now what you want with bone broth, and the ultimate goal is for when it gets cold or cools off enough that it's actually like jelly. I'm not sure with like when you buy certain stocks in the store, there's like the Knorr stock starters. They come in a little container like this. They're actually gelatinous, but this is more natural gelatin base. If you can see the separation on this one, that's good. So in general, that's how you make bone broth, kind of with chicken or beef, with a crock pot, or with a roaster. Like I said, if you have any questions about how to can the bone broth so it's shelf stable, leave some comments below and give it a thumbs up, and I can do that for you. Also, if you have any questions about or anything that I left out, leave the comment in the comment boxes below, and I will answer those for you. Maybe I'll do another video, like a Q&A video on that. But if you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. But if you did enjoy the video as well, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And